By now, you're probably thinking, my goodness, there is so much to remember. And I'm not going to lie, I felt the same way when I first started. I went through some information on pandas and realized, holy goodness, I didn't actually say goodness, I said a different word there. You could probably imagine what word. But I said, there's so much here. How am I going to remember all these functions off by heart? And the point here is to remember, you don't necessarily need to know all of this off by heart. The only reason I can kind of do this on the fly is because I've had a little bit of practice. Don't forget to always try the code yourself. You can look it up, find things like this. This is part of the research, part of being a data scientist, part of being a machine learning engineer is learning how to ask different questions. Think about, how can I do this with the data, and then trying to find out. With that being said, let's have a look in this next little section here at how to manipulate data with pandas. So we'll put another little heading like we've been doing. Or maybe manipulating data. That sounds a bit better. Escape, enter, press M for markdown because we're staying communicative. Excellent. And now, again, the beautiful thing about pandas is that if you can think of it, you can probably do it. So the first thing we'll see is manipulating data is some string methods. So Python has a bunch of different string methods like lower. What do you think this will do? If we go car sales make dot string dot lower. Let's see. Shift and enter. Oh, it's lowered the string because its data type is an object according to pandas, but it's actually also a Python string. So anything that you can do on strings in Python, you can do on string columns in pandas. There's a bunch of different functions there, but we'll just remember that you can access the string value of a column by doing dot string. We did that above in the price column. We converted it from a string to an integer. Now, if we have a look at our car sales data frame again, didn't we just lower the string? But it didn't actually save. Now, here's an important concept to remember. It's that pandas requires, if you want to change a column, it requires reassigning that column. So that means we want to set car sales make equals car sales make. We want to do dot string dot lower. There we go. Car sales make, dot string dot lower. Now, what this will do is it will reassign the car sales make column to be a lowered string. So let's have a look. There we go. The string has been lowered. So now all the letters in here are lowercase. You'll probably come across this a fair few times when you're working on different data frames, is this concept of reassignment. What some functions have is that to save you from having to go this column equals this column again, some sort of function, is some functions have a parameter called in place. We'll have a look at that in place parameter along with some missing data. But you might be saying, hey, our car sales data frame doesn't have any missing data. But in practice, in the real world, and when you get real data sets, I've made this one up, right? So I've typed in this into here. Real data sets often contain missing data. So they often look like this. Because you might have someone tracking some records. Ideally, they'd look like this, all the data there. But in reality, when you get a new data set, sometimes it's got a few holes in it, right? Someone hasn't tracked everything correctly, and that's just life. You don't always get perfection. So we're going to, do you remember how to import a CSV file? I've already exported this one. So we'll go pd.readcsv, and we're going to do tab autocomplete car sales missing data.csv. What this is going to do is save the car sales missing CSV and import it as a pandas data frame. So all it's going to do is bring this into being a data frame. Shift and enter. Now this is how pandas describes missing data. N-A-N for NaN. That's basically just saying, hey, I've got no value here. Not a number or something like that. Actually, not entirely sure what NaN stands for, but all I know is that it just means there's no value here. All right, so what if you wanted to fill these missing values with something? So say, for example, we wanted to fill the odometer. So we're accessing that. There's a function called fill NA, which is fill these NaN values. And you can pass fill NA some kind of value and it will fill these values. So maybe we want to fill up the odometer column with the mean of the rest of the odometers, which in reality isn't a very good practice, but just for demonstration's sake, maybe let's do that, dot mean. So what this is saying, oh no, we want missing because this is our missing. Missing. There we go. What this is saying is grab the car sales missing odometer column, this one, and fill NA, fill the missing values with the car sales missing odometer column's mean value. So the values that do actually exist there, we're going to get the mean and fill it. Let's quickly see what that is. Car sales dot missing odometer dot mean. So if we do this correctly, it should fill them up with this value. Let's go there. Beautiful. Now we've got all those missing values. So the third one down is now filled with the car sales missing odometer mean value. And we got a few reoccurrences there of all the missing ones. So now if we have a look at the data frame, and this is a practice you'll be going through, right? You'll be making manipulations here, and then you'll be consistently viewing the data frame. So you might do head, but because it's only small, we'll look at the whole thing. Oh, what's happened here? There's still NaN. Ah, this is the problem, right? This is what I was mentioning before, that in-place value that we can use. So let's see it in action. So we could do a reassignment by going car sales missing odometer equals that, and then reassigning the values to being something like that. But what we'll do, we'll look at the in-place parameter so you can see what I mean. So we'll get rid of that. We're going to copy this line of code so we don't have to retype it out. But remember, you should always practice retyping code so you get used to it. Now this fill NA has a parameter, and lots of pandas functions have this in-place equals. It's false by default, but we want true. Actually, this is a good time to look at the documentation. So, say we didn't know this fill NA function. What would you do to figure that out? So maybe we go to Google and we go, pandas, how to fill missing data in a column. Working with missing data. Yes, this is a pandas documentation. You get very familiar with looking at these. When you first start looking at this documentation, it can be a bit overwhelming because there's a lot going on. Remember, this documentation is for every single thing that pandas can do, so going through it can take a while. But if we look in here, maybe we want to search for fill. Fill missing values. There we go. Fill NA. Now, often it comes with, let me zoom in for you, a little hyperlink to the exact function. Fill NA can fill in NA values with non-NA data in a couple of ways. Excellent. And they give some examples here. We're going to click on the fill NA function and see what happens. So we got dataframe.fillNA, which is what we've got so far. Dataframe odometer, because we only want the odometer column. .fillNA, yep, tick for that. Value equals none. So by default, the value equals none, but it can take a few different values. In our case, our value is the mean of the odometer column. We'll come back. We can see this little in place parameter. It's got a few others, but we're not going to cover them for now. So in place, bool by default, false. If true, fill in place. Note, this will modify any other views on this object, e.g. a no copy slice for a column in a data frame. So if we set in place to true, it means fill in place. Let's have a look. In place equals true. Before we do, we'll take one last look at what our data frame looks like. Still missing values. So let's see what happens. Fill NA in place equals true. Now let's have another look. Go missing. There we go. So we've filled the values without reassigning. So without typing car sales missing odometer equals that. So that's just a thing to remember. You can always do it this way. Remember how I said Pandas has multiple different ways of doing the same thing? One way to reassign values is to reassign them by putting the exact value you want to replace at the start, or by setting the in-place parameter of a function to true. So that'll really depend on how your workflow goes. Personally, I'm not a fan of the in-place. I like just leaving it by default and then reassigning the value at the start. Let's have a look at one more thing before probably we'll take a little break, as this lecture's getting a bit long. It's if we wanted to remove these missing values. So say, for example, we're happy with filling the odometer column, but every other row that has missing values, we just want to ignore them because missing values aren't going to help us with our data analysis. In truth, they might, but we want to just see how we would get rid of them. Car sales missing. Now there's a function here called drop NA. Now we might just see what happens if we just run that. Drop NA, beautiful. Now if we type in here, car sales missing, what does our data frame look like? Oh, it hasn't happened again. Remember, we've just covered this. What do you think we can do to fix this up? So we might do car sales, drop NA, in place equals true. We'll hit Shift Enter, and we'll have a look at our data frame. Car sales missing. Beautiful. Now, what do you think the value is in maybe not putting in place as true? Now our car sales missing data frame is always going to return those rows with missing values are going to be dropped. What if we wanted to re-access them? We'd have to re-import the CSV. So maybe we do that. Equals pd.read CSV car sales missing. So we'll reset our data frame. We'll have a look at it. This one's going to have missing values. So maybe we create a new data frame, car sales missing dropped equals car sales missing dot drop NA in place equals true. So what this will do is it returns a copy of our car sales missing data frame, but with dropped values. Oh, I said in place equals true. We have to rerun this cell. That's okay. See, sometimes you make mistakes here. We're going to go drop NA. There we go. Car sales missing dropped. Beautiful. So it's going to be the same data frame, but dropped the missing values. And then what we might do is car sales missing dropped, save this to 2CSV as car sales missing dropped.csv. That way, we can, if we did want to access the rows with missing values, we can from our car sales missing data frame, this one here. Or if we wanted to manipulate our data frame with missing values dropped, we can from this data frame. So that's the important distinction there between using in place or not using in place. All right, we've covered enough on manipulating data in this lesson for the time being. So take a little break, revise over the few functions that we've gone through, have a trial out with in place versus not in place, and I'll see you in the next video.